Hello, good evening and welcome to this edition of the program. Thank you very much for your time. And tonight is June 4, 2020, and so that's 41 years ago. Then Flight Lieutenant Rawlings was released from prison on the morning of Monday, June 4th, and led a military mutiny to overthrow the SMC2 government of General Akuffo. Well, we'll talk about that in a bit, but we'll talk about that from the perspective of Sergeant Adom-Otchere, who was one of the main architects actually of the 31st December Revolution, but has penciled an article today in front of me with so many pages, particularly critical, hysterically critical of Flight Lieutenant Rawlings and the aftermath of June 4th. We'll take you back to last year. For those of you who did not see our documentary on the June 4th revolution, we'll show it to you again. But before then, today, the Supreme Court has been sitting. Interesting times ahead next week for the Supreme Court. What happened in court today is that the Supreme Court sat and took a decision. It took a decision fundamentally imposing an order on the Electoral Commission to demonstrate that they had a legal point to stand on in deciding that the CI that's before Parliament should exclude the voter ID card of 2012 and 2016. It would appear from what happened in court, as our reporter told us, and we're going to show you the reporter's account of what happened in court in a style and fashion that depicts a reality show, because the reporter walked into the office after the court case, and we just asked him questions. We're going to bring him on television, but because we looked at what we filmed in the office and it looked like it was good and interesting, we will show that to you, the raw footage of when the reporter was talking to me about what he found at the Supreme Court. Very interesting things he said, different dimensions of a report he gave us. His name is Vincent Jokoto. We'll show that to you in a minute. That will last for 20 minutes or so. We recorded 20 minutes of that conversation in our office earlier today. Also, our video editor spoke about it. And our researchers were asking him questions. And I think it will be interesting for you to have a look at that. It's coming up shortly. After that, we will talk about Sergeant Adom-Otchere, who has been writing today about Flight Lieutenant Rawlings. Never mind that Aloga was one of Rawlings' colleagues of the 31st December Revolution. He thinks that JJ is a hypocrite. He thinks that JJ amassed wealth when he became president. He's raising some fundamental issues about some names of people who were eliminated, and he's comparing them actually to George Floyd, the late departed brother, whose murder has now occasioned a lot of chaos all over the world, in major cities, in New York, in Los Angeles, in Washington, D.C., in London, and in Paris. So Katapori says JJ should not mourn for George Floyd, but he should think about a name that he mentions. Katapori does not give us all the details, but it looks like a very, very hysterical accusations against Flight Lieutenant Rawlings on JJ's big day, June 4th, 2020. And later on in the program, for those of you who are worried about knowing what JJ actually said, we have a full version of JJ's speech earlier today. It's 26 minutes long. I'll play the full version. Now, though, let's get back into our office and let us understand our first topic for tonight. What did the Supreme Court say today about the Electoral Commission? Our reporter, Vincent Jokoto, came into the office very tired. This is how it turned out. Hey, Mr. Man.
Hi, Paul. How are you doing?
I'm cool. So you're back from court?
Yes.
How was it?
Well, not as stressful. The usual bureaucracies of, legal proceedings.
Online reporting that it was a short sort of meeting today.
It was quite brief. I was there relatively much.
Let me reduce the volume here.
Sure. I was there relatively much earlier. I was there as early as 8:45. So seated from the gallery to receive proceedings.
Was there a gallery for press? Was it like press gallery?
Well, quite similar to I wouldn't say it was a press gallery, but in this particular situation, we didn't have supporters and visitors attending, so it was strictly restricted to journalists.
Okay, so it became the only gallery, and
yes,
it's for press.
It was the only gallery.
So you got at 8:45.
Yeah.
And then who came? Is it your first time at the court, though? Is it like a big baptism for you?
Oh, no, not quite. I've had some first-hand exposure to it. About 4 years ago, my parents thought, when I was considering becoming a lawyer then, that I should have some insights into the court system in Ghana before I went off to school. And so I worked, throughout the various stages from the Circuit High Court and did some legal research for, interestingly enough, 2 of the 7 all-male panel today. That's the Chief Justice Adom-Otchere and Justice Adom-Otchere. So I'd work
you did
some
internship work for both
yes,
of them?
Yes,
Adom-Otchere and Adom-Otchere.
Very rigorous.
So why are you saying all-male panel? Are you one of those gender? You sort of made an observation that was an all-male panel.
Well, I mean, there's representation when it comes to women on the bench as well. Certainly could be much better, but purely made that observation because that's the fact of the matter.
Give us the names then. So there was Adom-Otchere was the president today.
Yes, I did take some notes on the name. Of course, there was one of my favorite judges I should mention, Paul Bafoboni. Got quite an interesting demeanor. But you had Sule
Badegbe.
You know,
Badegbe.
I hear if you can't pronounce someone's name properly, you should avoid it.
But you can't avoid the judge's surname.
Absolutely. It's not before his court, but hey, I mean.
So he's Sule Badegbe.
Yes. Yes.
And so there's Adom-Otchere and Justice Adom-Otchere and Chief Justice Adom-Otchere.
Sure.
And then you have Justice Sule Badegbe.
Then you had Professor Ashi Kote.
Professor Niashi Kote.
Yeah.
He was my lecturer. He taught property law for many years at the Faculty of Law.
Oh, I wouldn't know.
Yeah, of course you wouldn't. Yeah.
You know, and Nana Amagacha was there as well.
And Amagacha also taught me advocacy at the law school.
Oh.
Yeah, he's the former president of the bar.
It's quite a one fraternity, I'll say, from undergrad law.
So you had
Nana
Amagacha, you had Professor Kote, and Justice Bafoboni.
You had Sam Tete as well, and Samuel Mafo Sao.
Mafo Sao.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's 7. That's kind of strong.
Yeah, yes.
So the Adom-Otchere obviously was presiding. So at what time did they come in?
Well, it took almost an hour, sometime around 9:30 thereabouts. You can always tell when you know proceedings will start because the wigs come on just like gloves in a boxing match. Yeah. And so the clerks came, you know, put the relevant documents on the table for the justice, and shortly thereafter we're asked to observe our lordships as they came to, you know, commence
Were they in
proceedings.
red?
No, they were not in red.
Okay.
They were clad in the black robes with very exquisite horse tail wigs.
Wigs, yes. Yeah. Straight from England.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't be able to tell, but certainly was of a relatively good quality as far as the eye can observe.
Who represented the NDC?
Adom-Otchere. He was quite punctual. I mean, when I got there at 8:45 a.m., he was seated there with former Deputy Chief of Staff, former Deputy Minister of Defense, and Minister of Health, Alex Sebefia. He was also roped.
Alex was roped?
Oh, yeah, with his pinstripe pants, you know, quite ready. I was
Alex
expecting...
Sebefia. This is the first time I'm hearing him in an NDC case.
Yeah,
I've not been going to the court, but that's impressive. Okay. So it's like all hands on deck right now.
Well, I wouldn't say, it didn't seem a desperate situation, but clearly, I mean, they're tapping into as much intellectual resources as they can garner as far as the parties.
But there was no Tony Letha?
I was surprised to see Tony Letha. I mean, with regards to the questions that were before the court today, and I'd say just, you know, regarding the repository of knowledge that he has when it comes to that field, I thought, you know, he would have added a bit more sophistication, not to undermine the caliber and competence of the people that were there today, but I thought Tony Letha was instrumental in a hearing like this, and perhaps maybe next week he might grace us with his
No
with his
Marietta
presence.
Brew upon?
Not Marietta either, but there was Yaba Jawara. He was assisting the young and charismatic Adom-Otchere.
I see, I like that. Who represented of course, Godfrey Dami represented the government side.
Yes.
And so he came in later?
Yeah, he came in slightly later, looked quite busy, always on the move, very fast-paced, seems quite a focused gentleman, eloquently, you know, suited in a double-breasted
you saw his suit, you looked at it?
Well, I think it's necessary when you're looking at a profession that isn't only rewarding when it comes to compensation, but requires a certain value and etiquette to the way you behave. You do what you would expect, you know, the Deputy Attorney General to the least bit be appropriately dressed.
Wow.
Oh, and quite a beautiful young lady as well. You know, speaking on the whole gender.
Mr. Vincent Jokoto, when you go to court to report for us, we don't want you to talking about beautiful ladies. That's not your responsibility at the court.
More from
go to the court and report that there was a lady. Well, how did you know she was beautiful?
Well, I think it lies in the eyes of the beholder. But I'm only making that statement because we spoke about an all-male panel earlier on, and so I thought, you know, it was very important to add that feminine touch. And there's something awe-inspiring about, you know, from the look of it, very assertive lady, not in the usual attire, expecting she was in pinstripe pants as well. You know, beautiful African hair. It's just
beautiful African hair.
Added to the touch
let's
of
get to
proceedings.
the meat of the matter.
Of course.
Viewers want to know
of course.
What is the... So then, what was the matter before the court?
Well, essentially two things. The plaintiff that was represented by Adom-Otchere and the NDC for that matter do want some clarity first and foremost on whether the voter ID can be used, you know, when it comes to compilation of the new register.
Yes.
And there's another aspect that has to do with, I guess, the question of citizenship. And I guess to put it in a much more, you know, to make it much more clear for people to understand it, has to do with probably what qualifies you to be a Ghanaian citizen and what makes you an eligible member of the voting class of the Republic of Ghana. So these are the two things that were before the court.
Basically, the reliefs that we have, they are asking in the first relief that the court should agree with them that Article 45, which asks the Electoral Commission to compile and review voters' register periodically, the word compile should be read to mean compile only once.
Well, yeah.
And then the second one is that even if they were to compile, as they are doing, they should, or as they want to do, they should include, as part of the documents that Ghanaians will present to the registration officer, the voter ID card that was used in 2012 and 2016's election.
Sure.
That's where I think the real
that's
issue.
Technically,
because the CI before Parliament, which is also going through some controversy, excludes the voter ID card. So this is really what you guys.
That's exactly what we were observing today.
How did the proceedings start?
Well, I was expecting quite fiery arguments, at least as far as, you know, legal, you know, proceedings were concerned. But it appears that, you know, the legal team for the NDC and the Deputy Attorney General's team weren't quite able to agree on that legal memorandum joint issue. And so it was a bit surprising. I mean, as, you know, both highly competent lawyers, you would have expected that should have taken place, and the Deputy Attorney General made it quite clear after being more or less apprehended by the Chief Justice in Poa that they endeavored to, but they've still not been able to negotiate
So you're saying that the President of the court was worried that parties have not been able to agree on the issues to be settled before the court?
Absolutely, and as much as I'd say the legal fraternity was confirmed with each other, you saw that sort of peaceful coexistence, there wasn't quite that significant communication
Point
between...
you're making diplomatically that there seemed to be hostility.
Well,
between the two parties.
Slightly. I mean, at the end of the day, they are going to be you know, regulated by the standard and ethics of the bench, and so it's not really quite up to them. But, you know, for me, it just represented how tense the political atmosphere is on this matter. And as members of the same, you know, association, more or less, you would expect some amount of cohesion. So
again, the point is that the court was unhappy that parties have not been able to agree. That's part of normal procedure.
Yeah.
So in the preliminary stages, parties agree on the issues that they believe the court should settle. They have not been able to agree on that. So they will have to agree on that.
They're going to have to.
Okay. Then what else happened in the proceedings?
Well, that's why I was...
Sorry, who was representing the Electoral Commission? We never talked about that.
Oh, yes, a very calm, elderly gentleman, myself.
Elderly?
Yes.
70?
Well, I think you may be referring to his physical stature. I wouldn't suggest he's aged. Yes, it was one, if I recall correctly, Justice, I did notice name down. These things do happen.
Yeah.
I did notice name down. That was Justice.
He's called Justice.
Yeah, he is called Justice.
Because when you are referring to a court reporter, you say Justice, we think of the bench.
I put his name. It's somewhere in here.
You can't find it.
No, I do have it. Is it Justice Mensah? But I wouldn't want to make that mistake. So give me a second.
Did he speak at all?
Oh yeah, he did. He did briefly make a few points that were.
Okay. We'll get it. Okay. So we are at the point where parties were not able to resolve the issues. Okay. Then now, beyond that, what happened? What did the court say about each of the? What did the Attorney General say? What happened after that?
Well, I guess right after, you know, it was noted by the Chief Justice that both parties weren't quite able to, come to that mutual understanding. The next rational, I guess, instruction was for the second defendant, who I'm struggling to...
The Electoral Commission.
For the Electoral Commission, to present a legal basis as to why the voter's ID card should be excluded, from a compilation or perhaps a revision of the new...
It's a compilation. So the court is asking the Electoral Commission to provide a legal basis why the Electoral Commission in the CI that is sent to Parliament excluded the use of the voter ID card as what they call a breeder document, so that those documents that you take to show who you are, so Paul Adom-Otchere, you have been Vincent Joko, you show up at the center, you either have your national ID card or you have a passport. Those are the only documents in the CI, constitutional instrument that's gone to Parliament. So I guess the court is asking the Electoral Commission that provide a legal basis for excluding this one.
Yeah.
That's what it is?
And, well, yeah, that's essentially what it is. Quite aptly put, I'm guessing some legal background. But the interesting bit was, there seemed to be a breath of fresh air as far as the plaintiff was concerned. I did engage her, the Deputy General Secretary of the party, her name I do remember, lawyer Barbara Sewa Samwa, was there. I had a brief conversation with her after, to kind of pick her mind on exactly what she thought about the proceedings, in the light of the fact that you've also got the CI, 126.
Yeah, that's maturing in Parliament tomorrow.
Exactly, which will definitely affect the quality of legal discussion.
So, did they have any oral argument? What did the Deputy Attorney General say?
They couldn't. They couldn't quite have an oral argument, basically because they couldn't agree on what the legal issues they would discuss would be about. I don't think that would repeat itself next week. It's extremely important for the Electoral Commission to ensure that both parties begin, some stage of dialogue, because the onus, more or less, as far as this instruction is concerned, now lies on them.
The Electoral Commission.
Definitely.
To provide the legal basis.
And if they are granted, that their aspirations of compiling what they deem to be a more credible electoral register, time is going to be of the essence. And so nobody more than that, the lawyer for the EC wants finality on this matter. It's absolutely key to him, and it's key
so because the Electoral Commission didn't have that. So the court asked the first defendant, the Attorney General, whether he has a legal basis or they didn't.
Well, they did for both parties. As a point of law, they could have made oral argument. My legal opinion, is that perhaps with the issue of that order, the dynamic of the arguments would change. You can't quite see how it would be beneficial for the plaintiffs, for the legal representative of the NDC, for Edigi Tamaklu, to advance an argument, given the fact that there's been a huge burden that has been shifted onto the Electoral Commission.
Provide a legal basis for this. Okay.
Yeah, which I
that means that the Deputy Attorney General is also going to file in support of the Electoral Commission.
Absolutely.
Showing the legal basis for
on
this.
Monday, sharp.
So when are they supposed to file?
By the 8th of January, on Monday.
8th of January file. When is the court reconvening?
11th for the hearing.
11th is Thursday.
Yes.
That's a big week for everyone.
It is.
And a busy weekend.
Absolutely.
Wow. That's a big deal. So on the political and PR side, the NDC are going to feel victorious at the preliminary stage.
Well, that's what we expect. That, I guess, is the direction in which the legal team will want to spin, the matter as far as the proceedings went. The thing is, Paul, when you consider the fact that the EC has recognized the flaws within its institution, in as much as far as public opinion is concerned, we're likely to see, to witness a situation where the one institution we're supposed to look to when it comes to confidence in our democracy may very well have to purge itself and more or less take the lid off its organization and expose the incompetence that has that exists within that has existed within the institution.
I mean, over incompetent. That's an allegation.
Well, not wholly. But this is, something very interesting happened on the 31st of January 2019. I was in studio while the Ayawaso thing was going on, and G. Menta walked in the studio. I think it's quite uncharacteristic of an Electoral Commissioner to grant an interview. Paul, you would know, wow.
Oh, she granted an interview?
Oh, she did, yes. Her first ever in-studio interview, for that matter. And I remember very clearly that she was quite bitter, first and foremost, about the team, and she thought their expertise could be harnessed, that she could deepen the human
resources.
resources.
Talking about the civil servants. Let's not digress on that. Okay,
Absolutely.
that's okay. So they're back in court on Monday to file, and Thursday the court will hear the oral arguments. By that time, they should have determined the issues for the courts to deal with.
They should have. That's what we naturally would expect.
Another legal position that has to be explained is that Parliament is going to look at it on. Parliament is going to the CI in Parliament matures on June 5, which is tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I don't know, because if it matures, then it's a ready document, and as it is before Parliament, it excludes the voter ID card of 2012 or 2016. So that's something that we have to wait to see. I don't know whether they're going to write to the Speaker to delay that until the court's ruling. Which is why
the largest opposition party in our country has been granted a lifeline when you look at the order that was issued by... The
Deputy Attorney General is going to say that it's court procedure. We will submit the argument and that'll be it.
But when you think about it,
if they do have those legal bases, if they do have.
But it's the best case scenario in a situation where clearly it's in the interest of the executive to ensure that whatever ensues this December 2020 isn't one that is questioned as far as, I guess, legitimacy is concerned.
Yeah, okay.
So the executive clearly is for a very clean voters register.
Yeah.
Parliament, I guess, is dominated by the New Patriotic Party. So when you look at the three branches, you've already got two sides that...
Executive and legislature.
Yeah, that clearly, I wouldn't say pro-new voters register, but are trying to, when what they claim...
So that's why the judiciary must really get the facts and get the legal arguments correct.
Exactly. And so for the Chief Justice to cast that entire burden on the EC to prove beyond reasonable doubt that particular reference for authentication of who you are as a human being shouldn't be part of it is something that I guess would be assessed
so you like going to court?
Well, I mean, I prefer the corporate stuff, but I do enjoy
so
the
you
politics.
Like reporting from court?
Absolutely.
Okay. That means you've been working since 8:45.
Yes, I have.
Okay. Richard, do you have a question for him?
Yeah, I do. Vincent, so when the court reconvenes next Thursday, is the court's panel still going to be the same?
Absolutely. I mean, until the case is over, we're expecting a consistency as far as that 7-member panel is concerned, presided over by the Chief Justice himself.
Okay. So. Good to know.
Derek, you listen now?
Yeah.
It makes sense. Is it good?
You know bad. I mean, it's correct. We've been able to get all what
the information.
The information you're looking at for. Just that I am thinking maybe because of our viewers, you should tone down a little bit with the
law.
The
slang.
Is it?
It is.
No. I think there's a fine difference between speaking well and slanging.
No, your own is slanging that I buy and all that. Terry, so what you do now?
Just retouching the June 4th documentary.
Okay. Yeah. So for later today. Okay, that'd be cool. Okay, congratulations. It looks like our chief editor likes your report.
Oh,
you've done a good job. You deserve something.
I guess. If I may ask, what's in your
this one is pineapple juice made in Ghana from the Kumfi factory. Maybe you want some? Shall I give you a glass?
Quite patriotic, but I've had quite a long day. I was wondering, have you got a little kick?
A little kick
for your mixture.
You mean you want alcohol? At what's the time? 5 something? You want alcohol?
Well, it's only a harmless question, Paul.
At your age, you don't do that. It's just pineapple, by the way.
Well, quite a boring.
Okay, so from your Facebook comments, I think that you like that one. Vincent Jokoto, you'll be seeing more of him here on Good Evening Ghana, and I'm sure that one of these days he'll handle a full program himself. It's election time, so we need more hands on deck. If you're a young man, you're brilliant, you're an economist, you're a lawyer, you're a political scientist, you want to be on our team for election, call me, send me an email at brandrepublicghana@gmail.com. brandrepublicghana@gmail.com. You're a young man. Vincent is not even 25 yet. So you're young, you're a lawyer, political scientist, economist, engineer. You want to work with us. We're going to deploy all over the country. We're deploying in 275 constituencies. We're going to launch our Constituency Watch. This is the best political discussion on television ever to have been held in Ghana. It is called Good Evening Ghana. It's by Metro TV. Sometimes I host it. My name is Paul Adom-Otchere. We're going into slippery waters because we're going to talk about Flight Lieutenant Rawlings, the marauding figure of Ghanaian politics, three-time coup maker, 20 years leader of the country, 2 successful coup attempts, 2 successful electoral victories, celebrating the 41st anniversary of his dastardly June 4th revolution today in Ghana. JJ has many strands to his legacy and has many strands to what posterity will be saying about him. Today he came up with a brilliant brand new look. JJ was trying to say that he has complied with COVID-19 social distancing. His barber has not been with him. He looks very strong, but all his hair is white. Flight Lieutenant Rawlings, our favorite protagonist of Ghanaian political history. We're going to talk about him now, so get ready for it. Okay, today we will show you a documentary that we put up last year that JJ himself was not happy about, as we were told, but which many political analysts found as an eye-opener as far as JJ's political history is concerned. One of his former associates, Aloga Akatapori, has written today, should we take what Aloga is saying seriously or should we not? Aloga is on your screen now. He was a sergeant in the army. Back in the day, Aloga was only one of those other ranks, as they call it, that is below the commissioned officer rank, who was a university graduate. He had been in student activism at the University of Cape Coast, and he had been recruited by the left wing of the Provisional National Defense Council, including Zarayebo, Yenien, Akatapori himself, Eboteria, and all of those who were on the left of the PNDC. There were other people on the right of the PNDC, Dr. Kwesi Boche, Dr. Joe Abe, etc., etc. PV Obey, Nana Kune Duajiman, Rawlings, Joyce Ayi, all of these names I've mentioned were said to be on the right of the Provisional National Defense Council. The left people lost the battle because somewhere along the line, the World Bank and the IMF, the Bretton Woods institutions, decided that they will help the PNDC only if they pursued right-wing economic agenda. Right-wing economic agenda was to create business, to facilitate business, and to have small governments, and also to reduce subsidies from everything that government was paying, including hospital, etc., etc. And so you know the rest of the story. As they say, the rest is history. But that history, one of these days we shall tell, the history of the Provisional National Defense Council. Okay, tonight we are introducing Aloga Akatapori, and we have to paint him, as the famous artist said, with everything that is with him. We are not going to paint him as a saint, nor do we paint him as a villain. Aloga, you must know, was a socialist-oriented person. He came to join the PNDC revolution. He left the PNDC revolution after he found that there had been a U-turn to the right. He was socialist. He didn't like JJ after he left. He's never liked JJ. Today he writes something about JJ. We will read it, we'll summarize it for you, but that's who Aloga is. As analysts and political scientists, we have to tell you who he is so that you know how to position him. Aloga Akatapori was a sworn-to socialist in the early 80s. He had been part of great student activism at the University of Cape Coast. He joined the PNDC revolution. He refused to become an army officer, even though he was better qualified than some of the army officers, I mean the commissioned army officers, because Aloga felt that he had to be with the downtrodden and that his university education should not qualify him to become an army officer. He saw army officerism as an elite part of the profession, and he didn't want to be an elite because Aloga was a sworn socialist. Aloga was part of the PNDC movement that wanted to turn Ghana into a socialist, pseudo-communist country. In the 83, 84, 82, those periods, the Cold War was still on between the United States and Russia. The Berlin Wall was yet to fall, so communism was still attractive. And the perestroika, which actually began the deconstruction of communism, had not yet started with Gorbachev in Russia. If you don't understand what I'm saying, don't worry, we'll explain it later. But there was a policy called perestroika. That was the beginning of the deconstruction of the communist bloc, which eventually ended in 1990 with the collapse of the Berlin Wall and the destruction of Eastern Europe, including Yugoslavia and Russia. And that ushered in what political scientists and some economists call the unipolar world. Before then, they call it a bipolar world, a world led by two powers, America and Russia. And unipolar is a world led by America, Britain, and Ghana, and other countries like that. Okay, so that's who Aloga is. What did he say about JJ today? After this, we will show you what we ourselves thought of Flight Lieutenant Rawlings and the June 4th revolution. It's work that we put together last year to commemorate the 40th anniversary, but which we still think that is particularly relevant to the course of our discussions today. Okay, so this is the summary of what Aloga said today about Flight Lieutenant Rawlings. Sorry, I'm reading from my phone. He says, 1, the only reason Rawlings seeks to celebrate the June 4th and 31st December is to promote the Rawlings brand as one associated with probity and accountability. But he, JJ, has shown not to be accountable, and not acted with integrity. Okay, let's look at that again. Aloga, and you see, when Aloga is speaking, he cannot speak exclusively about June 4th. He has to bring in 31st December revolution because Aloga was not part of June 4th, actually. So you will know that this June 4th has presented Aloga with an opportunity to criticize JJ because he was not part of June 4th. Maybe he should wait for 31st December before he criticizes JJ, but he's doing it now, and that's because Aloga was not part of June 4th. So in the summary, the first summary that we got for you, Aloga says that the only reason why JJ Rawlings celebrates June 4th and 31st December is to promote the Rawlings brand. You may agree or disagree with him, I don't know. Is JJ promoting the Rawlings brand? I don't know. It says the brand, to promote the brand as one associated with probity and accountability, but JJ himself has not shown that. He goes on to say that he, Aloga, is presenting a challenge to Rawlings. He challenges Rawlings to reflect on the death of 1 Awah, A-W-A-H is the name of the spelling, while he, Rawlings, condemns the death of George Floyd. Now, that's very, very interesting and very personal. Aloga says the Flight Lieutenant Rawlings should consider the death of 1 Awah. We don't know who Awah is. He doesn't provide any details of who Awah is. But from the way he speaks, it would appear that he does have the details. We don't know. He says 1 Awah's death should be, Rawlings should reflect on it. And he should not now condemn the death of George Floyd. What Aloga is saying is that the way George Floyd died, the gruesome way in which he was murdered, that has turned the whole world against racism, is the same way in which an Awah died in Ghana. Do you know who Awah is, viewers? I don't know. I don't know. Those of you watching on Facebook, do you know who Awah is? Anyone who knows, put up a comment and tell us who Awah is. I don't know who Awah is. Anyway. Okay, Aloga continues and says, Aloga wrote that if we succeed in expunging the indemnity clauses, and that's a big matter for the lawyers. It's a big story of the 1992 Constitution. So what are indemnity clauses? So after Flight Lieutenant Rawlings has ruled for a long time, the PNDC, and the country is going back into a constitution, they have what they call the transitional provisions of the 1992 Constitution. And, under the transitional provisions, Section 34, I think I still remember my notes, Section 34 of the transitional provisions says that anything that had been done by the coup makers throughout the PNDC government, either by them directly, associates of them, anything connected to them, cannot be tried by any court in Ghana and cannot be punished under any circumstance. That's what the indemnity clauses are about. They are part of the transitional provisions. It says that anything that has been done by JJ Rawlings, by anybody associated with the coup, all the members of the PNDC, which is the Provisional National Defense Council, all the secretaries of state, their assignees, anybody who were connected to the PNDC, anything which is criminal that a person did, a court in Ghana cannot look into those matters, and a court in Ghana also cannot prosecute in those matters, and no punishment can be delivered unto such persons. That's worrisome, but that finds itself in most of our constitutions. But this one, in the 1992 Constitution, is part of the Constitution, and we voted for it in the referendum. We agreed on it. So as far as the law is concerned, the indemnity clauses are there, and it cannot be removed. So whatever JJ did, whatever anybody did, has been indemnified. The story has always been that if you people hadn't done anything wrong, if you believe you are not committed any crime against Ghanaians, why did you put in indemnity clauses in the transitional provisions? Because these transitional provisions were written by the PNDC June 4th people themselves, because they were in power when it was written before they handed over power. They attached it to the Constitution and got every Ghanaian to vote for the Constitution. And the question has always been that if they have not done anything wrong, why did they have transitional provisions? Today, JJ is celebrating 41 years of June 4th, and Aloga is asking him, have a look at the indemnity clauses and take them off, and let's see whether you will be able to stand some of the things that will come against you. For those of you who are interested, who are students or who are interested in it, one of the best exposés of the indemnity clauses in terms of an analysis of it has been written by Professor Kofi Kumado in the University of Ghana Law Journal. I believe it's volume 14. And if you can get the article, it's entitled, Forgive Us Our Trespasses. It is written by Kofi Kumado. Maybe I can make it available on the Facebook page. Yes, I can scan it. I can scan it and put it on the Facebook page. So look out for that. Maybe tomorrow we'll do that on Good Evening Ghana Official on Facebook. It'll be on our YouTube page as well. Our Twitter is not active, but soon it will be. And when it is, we'll put it on. So it's about, I think it's about 8 pages. We can put all of it on. It's entitled, Forgive Us Our Trespasses. It's an article by Professor Kumado, and he talks about this matter that Aloga is talking about. Aloga says that if we can expunge the indemnity clauses, a fresh and proper investigations into the murder of the 3 high court judges and the retired army officer. Hey, this is getting very heavy and awkward. The Abacha 5 million bribery, but the Abacha 5 million bribery is not part of the stories that is covered by the transitional provisions anyway, because Abacha 5 million bribery allegation happened later on and Parliament dismissed it, and there's been no evidence of it. So here we don't agree with Aloga Katapori. Leveling and remembering and bringing back the Abacha 5 million bribery is of no consequence. I'm sorry, Sergeant Akatapori. This is of no consequence. If you lived in Ghana, I was in Parliament covering when the matter came up. It was a matter that was tabled by Hackman Uswajiman. At that time, he was the ranking member for Foreign Affairs. He tabled it in Parliament for Parliament to discuss it. There was a decision by Parliament by voting that the allegation of the Abacha 5 million bribery against Flight Lieutenant Rawlings did not satisfy the requirement for a motion before Parliament. Justice D.F. Annan was a speaker at the time and a ruling was made. I remember President Akufo-Addo then, as the minority spokesperson on Constitution and Legal Affairs, had quite a bit to say about that. Maybe later on we can say that story. He had a lot to say about that. There was a debate in Parliament, and the debate was whether or not the motion should be accepted, because Hackman had tabled the motion, as members of Parliament can do, and the debate was about whether the motion should be accepted or not. It was a debate that divided the minority and the majority, so Mr. Speaker called for a vote. Upon calling for the vote, the minority walked out and the majority voted, and the votes that was cast in terms of the numbers indicated that the Parliament of Ghana had decided that the motion by Hackman Owusu-Agyemang should fail, and the motion did fail. So, Mr. Katapori, this is some information for you, because I covered it. I know I covered it. I did. I was there by the grace of God. Okay, so he continues to write that Abacha 5 million briberies is also of no consequence. Then he talks about the sale of Gassem. About that, I don't have a lot of information. In fact, I don't have any information at all about that. I can research for those of you viewers who are interested. I can look at it. Gassem sale. He talks about the Nassau Cannery and the GNTC land sales. That also I don't know anything about, but if land had been sold, it's the Lands Commission that will sell it. It's not President Rawlings, Mr. Loga Katapori. If lands have been sold, and lands continue to be sold in Ghana today, lands have not stopped being sold. Kwame Nkrumah sold, everyone sold. Or what I should say is that under Kwame Nkrumah's regime, it was sold. Lands are sold by the Lands Commission. If you have any information that such lands were sold by Flight Lieutenant Rawlings, which I doubt, Mr. Katapori, you can put it there. I'm raising these concerns because I want us to put this Akatapori document in perspective. Some of the things he says are genuine, but we have to understand that Akatapori doesn't like Rawlings. You see, and in this country, we want people to see that when people don't like people and they say something about them, let's analyze it properly. Akatapori doesn't like Rawlings. He doesn't like Rawlings. He left the revolution because Rawlings decided to go to the right. He's a left wing. It's not just him. Akatapori, Yenien, Zayebo, they all left the government because they don't like Rawlings. They don't like the way Rawlings was going. Maybe even Dr. Yao Graham. For him, I cannot say for sure. But Akatapori, Zayebo, and Yen Yen, they left the PNDC because the PNDC decided to do a right-wing government. So really, when Akatapori says something about Rawlings, we have to look at it and analyze it well. And that's what we are trying to do. This is 5 million Abacha bribe. It doesn't hold water. I don't know. Parliament has already decided upon it. You know. So the issue about transitional provisions, genuine. 5 million Abacha bribe, we don't agree. The sale of some cannery, GNTC land, he says all that. And he says that the circumstances of the fire which burned down the previous residence should be looked at. Akatapori seems to have a lot of information. So you remember that Flight Lieutenant Rawlings' residence at Ridge here in Accra was gutted by fire during the period of the Mills administration. Akatapori says we should look into it. There were no death deaths recorded in that fire. Some documents in Rawlings's private room was destroyed. Most of the house was ravaged by fire. It has been reconstructed by the Mills administration and it's ready now. I don't know what it's being used for, but it's available. It's next to his office. You know, what used to be Mrs. Rawlings's office is now Fly Lieutenant Rawlings's office in the same sort of compound. And the building is now being constructed. I don't know what happens there. But Akatapori says we should look into it in the document that he put up. It's a big document. This, what I have in my hand here, as printed by one of our researchers, is a big document. So how many pages is it? Let me have a look at it. Okay. Anyway. But Akatapori, you helped Rawlings to overthrow a legitimately elected government of the PMP. And then you come back 38 years later to tell us that Rawlings is a bad man. What shall we do with you? You were a sergeant in the army. You didn't resist the revolution. As an army person, you had sworn an oath to protect the government of the day. You took your gun and joined soldiers of the PNDC and killed the Recce CEO, Colonel Collison, may he rest in peace. You killed army officers in the course of the revolution who were resisting, who were doing their constitutional obligation. You, Akatapori, did that. And you come back and you say we should do what? Listen to you, that you have written a letter against Rawlings. We don't care about you anymore. You should first come and apologize to the Ghanaian people and tell all the soldiers in the barracks, in Burma camp, in all the 7 battalions as we now have. At the time you were leaving, it was 5 battalions. If you don't know, it's now 7. Akatapori, be reminded. 5th Battalion of Infantry, which is where you were in Accra. You joined the soldiers and you overthrew President Liman's administration. If that coup didn't occur, today Ghana will be a different place. You gave JJ support to do the dastardly act of a revolution against the elected government of the people of Ghana, a government that had won the election and had parliament and had ministers in place. You decided in your own silly wisdom that you should overthrow the government, the legitimate government of Ghana. You come back 38 years later and trying to push yourself into June 4th when you were not part of it. You are itching to say something about Rawlings. You cannot wait for 31st December. Last year, 31st December that happened. Didn't you hear it? I mean, we had our own 31st December bashing. We have apologized to Rawlings for that. No problem. Won't do that again. You heard him talk on 31st December. You didn't say anything. You are itching to talk about him. So on June 4th, you come and write something. You were not part of June 4th. Boachi Jan can talk about June 4th. Major Mensah Poku can talk about June 4th. But not you, Akatapori. What have you got to do with June 4th? And we are building a country. I mean, all of us were under 10 years at the time. We are building a country. Please, you owe Ghanaians an apology. Sergeant Aloga Akatapori, you, Yen, all the actors of the 31st December revolution, you owe Ghanaians an apology. Come and deliver that apology and stop hiding in London and writing that you are against Rawlings, so we should do what? When the Abacha 5 million bribe came, were you in Ghana? What were you doing in London? And then you come here today and say that we should join you to attack Rawlings. Yeah, we will attack Rawlings where we have to attack him. And we will speak the history where we have to speak the history. As soon as I finish this, we are going to show you a documentary about June 4th. It's our research work, and you can challenge it, but it's research work. And we pass a verdict. And the verdict is not particularly exciting for J.J. Rawlings because we talk about his activities on June 4th. But it doesn't lie in your mouth, Akatapori, to tell us that Rawlings is bad. You are worse than Rawlings. Akatapori, you are worse than Rawlings. You took a gun. At least that time, Rawlings was not a member of the armed forces. He probably didn't have a gun. You were a member of the armed forces. You took your gun and conducted a mutiny, conducted an overthrow of the 31st December of the legitimate government of Dr. Liman and Vice President de Graaf Johnson. We don't want coup makers to come and join our democratic narrative. Can you get that clear, Akatapori? We don't want coup makers, embarrassing coup makers, to come and join our democratic conversation and our democratic narrative today about Ghana. At least, Rawlings submitted himself to 2 elections. At least, he submitted himself to 2 elections. We have our problems with him historically, but he submitted himself to 2 elections. He said, I will go to the election. Let Ghanaians decide on me. People went and voted for him. 2 separate occasions. He has campaigned with the NDC for Professor Mills. He has joined the democratic fray. So he has something. What have you, Akatapori, done since you did a coup in the interest of democracy, in the interest of the development of our country? And then today you come and write a letter that we should help you attack J.J. Rawlings, or that we should clap for you. All the coup makers listening to me, please don't come and join our democratic narrative. Don't come and join our democratic narrative. A democracy has been built. 1992 has come. We have now had 26 years of uninterrupted democracy. We are going into our election in 2020. President Mahama will slag it out with Akufo-Addo. One of them will win. We'll have another election in 2024. We will continue to have an election every 4 years, forever and ever. Yes, we want to change our constitution. We can change that. But we'll continue to have elections. Akatapori, you owe us an apology. We are waiting for it. We owe the posterity, the Ghanaians who are dead, the Ghanaians who are living, and the Ghanaians who are yet to be born. You, Akatapori, owe us an apology for carrying your gun, to the gun that the taxpayer gave to you. You carried that gun to overthrow Dr. Liman's administration. You helped JJ to do that. And now you're falling out with him. You come and write something about him. Okay, I've been signaled that our time is running, so let me finish. Akatapori wonders why Rawlings does not rather celebrate May 15th. So what? This is another point of no consequence. It's absolutely of no consequence. What should he celebrate May 15th for? May 15th was an abortive coup, a coup that didn't succeed. Why should he celebrate it? Akatapori, I don't know, but Joy FM interviewed him before. In fact, the photograph we showed you of him, if they put it on again, you see that it's from Joy FM. And Joy FM interviewed him before. Maybe they should go and find him and interview him again. Because the kinds of things he's writing here, that why doesn't Rawlings celebrate May 15? What should we do with Rawlings celebrating May 15? Who celebrates a coup that didn't succeed? Have you heard some before? Who celebrates a coup that didn't succeed? Okay, finally, Akatapori says he wonders if June 4th is a solemn memorial for the generals executed or a memorial for the soldiers who died fighting on that day. Okay, so you've heard all the Akatapori stuff now. We will move on. You're still watching Good Evening Ghana live. Our conclusion is that Akatapori owes Ghanaians an apology. He should not come and talk about JJ. What's the apology for? The apology is for him participating in the unwarranted, undemocratic, and dastardly events of 31st December that overthrew a legitimate government, a government that was formed by the people of Ghana, a government that was formed by the PMP, elected after a second round of voting. Akatapori was part of those who used taxpayers' resources, particularly his AK-47, shooting in the air, maybe shooting people, maybe even killing people to become or to put in place a Provisional National Defense Council, a government unwarranted by the people of Ghana. So that's our comment on that. Now, though, our own conversation with Fly Lieutenant Rawlings. Last year on the 40th anniversary, we put our resources together to put up this half-an-hour documentary on JJ and June 4th. It's half an hour. After that, back in the studio, we will show you what JJ said tonight. If you haven't seen it, look out for JJ's new look. It's a white hair all over, white beard, white everything, looking whitish. And he also spoke about the Electoral Commission. Here is our documentary, 40 years of the June 4th Revolution, remembering June 4th again at 41.
Monday, June 4th, 1979, was a rainy morning. The political campaign towards elections, presidential and parliamentary, for the Third Republic was in full swing. J.J. Rawlings and the coup plotters of May 15th were behind bars. And then suddenly, a coup arrived. The generations of Ghanaians who were living in Ghana at that time were those who had had close proximity to the riots of 28 February 1948, the political tensions of the First Republic, the coup d'etat of 1966, and had also heard and seen the excellent speeches of Prime Minister Buzia. And they, that group, had largely orchestrated civil disobedience to force strongman Kutu Achampon to hand over to civilian rule. This was the generation that mobilized professionals under the PMFFJ to unseat military rule. So on the morning of 15 May, everyone was angry that another coup was occurring when everything was ready for constitutional rule.
Now, the reaction to that attempt all around the country, from all our reporters, was, oh, please, these soldiers, we are tired. What's this? We are going back to civilian rule. We are going to have elections. Why is somebody trying to stage a coup again? That was the general impression, and I believe even among the military at the time.
This anger of the people against coups must have been the reason why the AFRC was forced to maintain the order to hand over power soon after the June 4th revolution. So a complicated calendar emerged. The coup occurred on June 4th. Parliamentary and presidential elections were fought on the 18th of June. The executions were carried out on the 26th of June. The second round of the presidential election occurred in July, and the handover to civilian rule occurred in September. All of this in 1979, a dramatic June to September for all of Ghana's history. So what was the June 4th coup about, and who organized it?
The June 4th uprising was the brainchild of rank-and-file soldiers. No officer, and I repeat, no officer, was involved in its initial stages. It was born out of years of frustration and anger with the officer corps, whose frequent military interventions, mismanagement, and ineptitude had brought our country almost to its knees. Our soldiers wanted to protest against the dictatorship of their superiors.
Be that as it may, was the coup also intended by J.J. Rawlings to be a political advert for the future? Was J.J. launching a bigger political career beyond the rhetoric and the choboy of a revolution? Here is Elizabeth Ohene, who was editor of the Graphic at the time.
Flight Lieutenant Rawlings said to me that, he was going to lead the group of soldiers that were going to see off General Akufo at the airport. Because General Akufo, having become chairman of the SMC2, that day he was going to, I think, the Gambia and Senegal. And Flight Lieutenant Rawlings said to me that, he was going to be the officer who was going to lead the guard of honor at the airport. Could I please make sure that the graphic cameras capture this? So at the meeting, the morning meeting where we send out reporters and such, I declared an interest. I said to my colleagues at the meeting that I have an interest. There's a friend of mine who is going to lead the detachment that will see off the guard of honor for General Akufo. That can the cameraman who is going please make sure that they take a photo of him. It's called Flight Lieutenant Rawlings. And everybody laughed. And we put this picture of Flight Lieutenant Rawlings leading the guard of honor detachment on the front page of the Graphic. A few days later, Flight Lieutenant Rawlings stages or attempts to stage a coup May 15th. This is a few days later. So that day, as it happened, the Graphic was the only person that had a photo of the person who had tried to stage the coup. And why did we have a photo? Because we had photographed him leading this detachment at the airport. That's the only reason we had the photo of him.
Who then was the AFRC and how was it formed?
Apparently, Captain Edmund Koda had recently said, and I read it in the papers, that the AFRC was formed in a classroom. I won't dispute that, because we were in a lecture hall. We were in a lecture hall at the Air Force Base, and I believe that was where the AFRC was formed, and of course in my absence. And then news came through that Broadcasting House had been recaptured by Major Suleimana and some of his Recce elements. So I decided, well, what I started has got to be finished. So I'm going to go out and deal with this new threat.
Justice Kwame Afre talks about how the AFRC operated.
The AFRC government consisted of two main organs. The AFRC itself, made up of the chairman, as Flight Lieutenant Rawlings, then the deputy chairman, Osahene Boachijan, about 4 commissioned officers, and I think a majority of people of other ranks. And then there was a council of commissioners, which consisted of the commissioners or ministers who run the ministries. As Osahene himself said, they inherited us from SMC2. Now, in between these two organs, the FRC installed the liaison officer. I think the name is a bit long, but liaison officer, in the person of General Joshua Hamidu, through whom the two organs occasionally communicated. The FRC met and took its decisions without consulting the commissioners. I cannot recall that the FRC and the council ever met together. With your permission, I'd just like to contrast this with what happened in the SMC. The SMC, you have the Supreme Military Council consisting of the senior military officer who constituted that council. But then there was a larger group called the National Redemption Council, which they had inherited from SMC1. And I think every month, or at least every 2 months, once every 2 months, all the SMC members and all the all the commissioners met at cabinet meetings. But we didn't have this particular system operating under the AFRC.
So the AFRC came in when the timetable for constitutional rule had already been set up. No changes were made to that timetable. What then did the revolution seek to achieve, and how did that help the cause of Ghana? I'm afraid to say not much. Not much at all. The high point of the AFRC discussion is the killings, the executions. The first thing the AFRC did was to pass a decree creating special courts to trial people. The trial courts were said to be sitting at the presidential Peduase Lodge in the eastern region. The trial process was horrendous. The courts were actually kangaroo courts, and they convicted their victims of anything they found them guilty of. They gave them huge sentences and prescribed execution for some of them. These courts struggled for credibility. At some point, they claimed that they had relied on the Criminal Code Act 29 as it then was, so that persons who overthrew or participated in the overthrow of constitutionally elected regimes were charged and found guilty of treason, and they were killed by execution. That's the reason they gave for the killing of Kutu Achampong and Utuka. But could there have been another reason for the killing of Achampong and others?
General Achampong was deemed to have been the leader of a coup which overthrew Dr. Bussia's PP government and which overthrew Ghana's Second Republic. General Achampong was executed as much for the dishonor he had brought to the Ghana Armed Forces. Let's face it, soldiers were shy of our civilian counterparts. We had absolutely no respect from our own compatriots. Why? Because we were soldiers. Urine was being poured on our soldiers who were being sent out on police duties. We were soldiers, not policemen. We wanted to soldier. I left the university and I went in as a career officer because I loved soldiering. I wanted to soldier. And here was I, another officer, perhaps even without my background academic qualification, refusing to share a toilet with me. He was a political officer. Now, if an officer would treat a fellow officer that way, how contemptuous would he be towards our civilian folk? General Achampong had no chance. But perhaps the AFRC may have been magnanimous. They may have sacrificed they may have opted to spare his life. I don't know, but that is a moot point. I wasn't a member of the council. But my information is that there were other parochial motives for the general's execution. A cabal of tribalists who have come to be known as the Jelukofe Mafia wanted General Acheampong dead.
One aspect that has not been widely publicized is the grand drama that occurred before Kutu Acheampong was executed. The said drama is contained in this book, Ghana, Nkrumah to Rawlins, is by Emmanuel Dozoklu, Volume 1, and it covers 1957 to 1993. On page 461, the subtitle, Acheampong's Last Words, before he and Major General Utuka were shot by firing squad, is culled from Young and Old, August 1991. It reads, former head of state, the late General Ignatius Kutu Acheampong, did not know that the soldiers of the AFRC era will kill him on June 16, 1979. If he knew, he would not have opened his mouth to speak his last words in the manner that he did. Kutu Acheampong's last words were spoken on Wednesday, 13th June, but 72 hours later, on 16th of June, Kutu was dead and gone, having been executed by firing squad together with Major General E.K. Utuka, a member of Acheampong's SMC-1 government. It is significant to add that when Kutu spoke his last words to the soldiers at Burma camp, they found Acheampong's last words too sweet, quote-unquote, to believe. They therefore decided that everybody should hear what Acheampong had to say. They therefore carried him to the army headquarters, Accra. Now, these are his last words. He said, unquote, I pledge my full support for the Armed Forces Revolutionary Council, which toppled the SMC-2 government headed by General Akufu on June 4th. In pledging this support, I am not in any way being sycophantic because I am aware that the AFRC is taking stringent measures to solve the country's problems, something my government and that of General Akufu could not do. Acheampong continued, and I quote, I have no regrets for staging the 1972 coup which toppled Dr. Busia's government, and looking back at my reign as Ghana's head of state from January 13, 1972 to July 5, 1978, when General Akufu and others removed me from office, I feel I have done enough for Ghana. I can't claim to be infallible. Perhaps my only fault was that I was too lenient and kind. I helped people like J.H. Mensah, Apia Minka, and Dr. Bilson to make money, even though I was aware they were my political enemies. General Akufu and others have accused me of running the government as a one-man show. They are liars, and that accusation against me is baseless because every action taken during my tenure of office was a collective one. General Acheampong continued, and this on page 462. On July 5th, 1978, when some of the SMC members asked me to resign, I pointed out to them that it was not me as an individual that Ghanaians did not want. I told General Fred Akufu that they were looking for all of us. I warned General Akufu that he would regret this action and that he was going to create more confusion. My removal was not endorsed by all the SMC members, unquote. Still making the statement, General Kutu Acheampong parried off some accusations. He said, for instance, on page 463 as follows: at separate times, Mr. Kofi Anane Benfo, then Senior Principal Secretary, Ministry of Finance, and Lieutenant Colonel Akompi were those responsible, and therefore, if any of them had diverted part of the import licenses for their personal use, I cannot tell, unquote. He continued, before my overthrow, an investigation into an aircraft deal revealed that Air Vice Marshal Bozole, former Air Force commander, was seriously involved in the corrupt deal. After the report on the deal was made to me, General Akufu approached me to say that Air Vice Marshal Bozole had asked him, General Akufu, to beg me on his behalf, unquote. Also, as part of the statement, Kutu Acheampong answered the most famous allegation against him, the allegations of his debauchery and lasciviousness. He says as follows, unquote, it is not true that I bought golf cars for my numerous girlfriends. I don't deny that I had girlfriends. All of us have girlfriends. Even you. Which of you flirts with your wives only? We all do it. And to me, I don't see how girlfriends contributed to the ruin of Ghana's economy. No one can claim to be a paragon of virtue. We all do it, unquote. Thus, Utuka and Achampong were the first to be killed. Everyone was shocked, and anyone of influence in Ghana tried to make moves to halt the killings, but all of that was to no avail. General Afrifa's execution was the most unwarranted. He was accused of overthrowing Nkrumah in the 1966 coup, whilst General Ankara, who was part and leader of the coup, was not tried. Worse still, Section 37 of the Transitional Provisions of the 1969 Constitution had indemnified all coup makers, so that should have covered Afrifa if this was a regular trial. But this was not a trial at all, where the accused person did not see the faces of the judges and didn't know how many judges were trying him. He only saw a glass screen in front of him. General Akwesi Amankwa Afrifa had actually removed his military clothes. He had become a full civilian, participated in politics, and actually was elected the UNC Member of Parliament in Mampong in the elections of June 18th, a few days after the coup. He had won the election on the ticket of the UNC as the only candidate to have won a seat in Ashanti region for William Oforiate's party. On June 26, 1979, the unthinkable happened. On the 26th of June 1979, Member of Parliament-elect Akwesi Amankwa Afrifa and 5 others were killed in cold blood in the second round of executions.
The executions were senseless, unnecessary, and dastardly.
Former Minister of Finance and former Vice Chancellor of the University of Ghana, Professor George Bennett, told a story about how the executions ended in his autobiography. Writing his autobiography entitled My Time, My Nation, the former Vice Chancellor and Minister of Finance recounts on page 84 under the subtitle The Executions of Military Officers as follows. He says, as I recall, 4 of us were selected: Dr. Joe Abe, D.K. Afre, Mrs. Gloria Nikwe, and myself. We went to the Air Force Base to meet members of the AFRC. We argued out our case against the executions. Some of them were not convinced. I remember clearly that D.K. Afre was very smart. When he realized that we were not making headway in our presentations, believing that it might be better if we spoke in vernacular to make the discussions more informal, he decided to change the language of the discussion to Akan. That played the trick, and some of the soldiers were more forthcoming in their contributions. I remember one of the soldiers telling us that they will not go ahead, but they had killed soldiers, and it was important that they kill at least one civilian to pacify everybody. The name they were mentioning was Boache Mattress. He was a prominent businessman. That at least he must be killed. We continued to plead for his life, but were not making any headway. So we thanked them and appealed to them to consider our request, and we left. We then prepared the statement for consideration by Chairman Rawlings. Later, General Hamido informed us that he had taken our statement to him, and to our greatest delight and surprise, Chairman Rawlings made the broadcast, more or less reading the statements that we had prepared. That was a crucial moment in the revolution because it really called the executions to a halt. So that was June 4th, a horrible, dastardly, unwarranted uprising. Many years later, during the celebration of the June 4th uprising, Flight Lieutenant Rawlings described the Third Republic, which he overthrew, as a naive interruption to the revolutionary course.
In about 2 days' time, as you all know, will be the 8th anniversary of our long march. The long march that was naively and rudely interrupted. The march that was begun in 1979, which was fortunately resumed again on 31st December 1981.
On the same occasion, J.J. Rawlings complained about how June 4th celebrations had become synonymous with profanity from the soldiers.
I would like to make one little appeal, a personal one. Our mothers and wives are beginning to complain about some of the songs that our little ones are picking up. And they were hoping that we would tone down on some of the profanities. Of course, we can step them up outside of the barracks or wherever the children, in the absence of the children. But otherwise, I would like us to sing some of the other ones that we know about. One of the most popular ones that I used to know, somehow I don't even hear anymore. The one that goes, Zamana watiwa, Zamana watiwa, Zamana abelefu, Zamana. That's right. You see what I mean? And if the whole lot of us should pick on his Zamana, I know we would shake up a crowd. So let's not forget it next time.
June 4th continued to be celebrated as a holiday even under the constitutional rule of the 4th Republican Constitution of 1992. And they did so even though the Supreme Court had ruled in a separate matter that the other JJ coup of 31st December 1981 cannot be celebrated as a public holiday because it was an illegal act. The most tensed celebration of the June 4th revolution was in 1995. This was so because less than a month before the celebration, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, Charles Reko Brobe, Kweku Baku Jr., Kwesi Pratt Jr., Dr. Nyaho Tamaklo, Mr. Kakraba Cromwell, Mr. Akoto Ampao, and Mr. Kweku Poku had all led what became the biggest ever demonstration in Ghana. They called it the Kumi Preko demonstration. More than 100,000 people were on the street in protest against JJ's government. This seemed bigger than June 4th, and on the occasion of the 16th anniversary of June 4th, Flight Lieutenant Rawlins for the first time seemed rattled and issued threats to the opposition in a harsh manner, similar to the way he spoke in 1979 and in 1981.
However, ladies and gentlemen, let no one underestimate our capacity and resolve to react appropriately if their ugly noises provoke ugly actions from their blind followers.
During the other celebrations of June 4th whilst JJ was president, sometimes he was sober, even occasionally expressing regret for the things that had happened at June 4th, but still making his point.
June 4th, therefore, belongs to the people of this country, and they have a right to measure those of us in leadership today by the yardstick of June 4th, 1979. Ladies and gentlemen, there are some who say the times and conditions have changed. They say the excesses of June 4th era should not be glorified or made a part of national life. No, we do not glorify the excesses of June 4th, but we glorify its principles, and all of us must remember that principles are principles and they never change.
When John Agyekum Kufuor became president in the year 2001, the celebration of June 4th was immediately outlawed by an amendment to the Holiday Act. So what's the legacy of June 4th? Let's find out from the presidents of the 4th Republic. JJ Rawlins made it a holiday. John Kufuor, President Mills, President Mahama, and President Akufo-Addo all did not make it a holiday. So the verdict is JJ 1, Kufuor, Mills, Mahama, and Akufo-Addo 4. Thus, JJ has lost. The perpetual flame lit for June 4th must die. What shall we then say to June 4th? We can say good night, June 4th, good night. And when morning comes, please don't wake up. No one wants to see you. Never again will June 4th be given a national salute.
Right! National salute! Retake us!
And yes, the June 4th cheers will never be heard again.
Oh, he may, 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 Abua Biribo, Jata Biribo. Ghana
Goodbye, June 4th. Goodbye. Ghana will never do this again.
Ghana, my happy home, land of rich resources, land of mighty talent, racial tolerance, justice and freedom. Ghana, my happy home.
There is 1 million excitement in the air, and Sapper just tapped into the mood with his share of waste bin from the 1 million waste bin project.
1 million waste bin project?
It is a nationwide social intervention project aimed at helping improve the lives of people by correcting poor sanitation practices and improving solid waste collection service delivery in Ghana by providing 1 million radio frequency identity tagged free waste bins.
Radio frequency identity tagged waste bins? This will enable monitoring of how often the waste bins are emptied in real time. Wow!
From your homes, offices, schools, hospitals, right through to places of worship. Yeah, baby.
How and where do I sign on?
Our branded registration and distribution officials will come along with their ID cards to register and distribute waste bins to all households. Just provide them with your name, contact number, house number, and digital address. Once signed on, you'll be introduced to your zone's designated waste collection service provider who will collect your waste on agreed days of the week.
Wait, is it free?
Yes, of course. The waste bins are free. You would, however, be required to pay a token as a registration fee at the point of registration and a monthly subscription fee as communicated by your service provider. Payment for such services can be done through mobile cash payments, short code *887*87# or through all Ecobank branches and payment platforms nationwide.
Oh my God, this is already getting exciting.
Yes, bro. With the 1 million waste bin project, you would enjoy improved solid waste collection,
easy access to complaint services,
quick response to complaint, easy and convenient means of payment.
What am I waiting for?
What are you waiting for? Get ready to grab your free share of waste bins now.
The show is a funny one.
He's a king of prime time. Do you want a linguist? Or you want statistics?
This KSM show is an extraordinary.
Yep, every Friday on the Prime Time show.
This is the numero uno show in the whole of Africa.
If there's one show I don't miss, it's the KSM show, the king of prime time.
KSM show, Adom-Otchere, prime time.
Keep watching. Keep watching.
Really, what else would you be watching other than the KSM?
That's what I watch. All smart people do this.
The
KSM show.
The KSM show, Fridays at 9 p.m. on Metro TV.
WhatsApp messages and emails that you want to join the team. That's exciting. Congratulations to our new reporter, Vincent Chokoto. That was JJ Rawlings, our verdict. You can criticize it. It's on Facebook. You can look at it and tell us what you think. But that's Good Evening Ghana for tonight. Sorry, we promised to bring you an Abu Ramadan documentary. It will show up on Tuesday. The Supreme Court is still waiting to hear stuff, so it's still relevant. Thanks for watching. Good night.